All right, so Google's really been making waves in AI lately, and their latest creation, Gemini, well, it's got everyone talking. We're diving into all the hype today, and we've got some fascinating research to dig into. Got a blog post straight from Google itself, and get this, an academic paper that dives into how Gemini could totally shake things up in education.
Yeah, Gemini's really caught people's attention. And you know what's got me hooked? It's not just another AI trying to sound like us, like those chatbots. It's built to be multimodal.
Multimodal.
Oh.
Okay, gotta admit, love the jargon, but gotta break that down for us. What's that mean exactly?
Basically, it means Gemini's not limited to just text like some of its predecessors. We're talking images, audio, videos, even code. Gemini can work with all of it.
Now, that's what I call thinking outside the box, or maybe outside the text box in this case. So how does that actually work? What can Gemini do with all that sensory input?
Well, imagine you're wrestling with a tough physics problem, right? Instead of spitting out a textbook answer, Gemini could look at a diagram and even a video lecture at the same time. Then it connects the dots and explains everything using visuals that actually make sense to how you learn best. Way more intuitive than just staring at a textbook.
Whoa, whoa, back up a sec. It can analyze a problem from a textbook and a video lecture at the same time. That's next level stuff.
It is. And this research paper we have here argues that this could totally revolutionize personalized learning. Imagine AI tutors that actually get how you learn, making custom study plans, giving you instant feedback in a way that actually clicks.
Okay, that'd be a game changer, especially for a visual learner like me. But before we get ahead of ourselves, didn't Google just launch Gemini back in December of 23? That's going head-to-head with ChatGPT, which, we've talked about before. Is it even available to the public yet?
Oh, it is. And get this, they've released 3 different versions: Ultra, Pro, and Nano, like choosing the right tool from the toolbox. Ultra's the powerhouse, built for serious data crunching and hardcore research. Then you've got Pro, more for everyday use, businesses, developers, that kind of thing. And finally, there's Nano, streamlined for your phone.
Yeah, pretty soon your phone could have a serious AI assistant powered by Gemini.
Wow, covering all the bases. Sound like Google's betting big on this.
Oh, absolutely. They're pushing for it to be everywhere. Think Google Search, Android, even making it available to developers. Can definitely see why. Giving developers access to that kind of tech. Talk about a recipe for some serious innovation. But let's get back to what Gemini can do. We've talked education, but what about other stuff? You mentioned it can even understand and write code.
Ah, now you're speaking my language. Let's say you're prepping a presentation, right? Big scientific breakthrough, super tight deadline. You could feed Gemini a dense research paper and a video of the lecture that goes with it. Now, instead of just summarizing each one separately, Gemini can analyze both, get the context, and give you the key takeaways, even highlighting the connections between the paper and what the expert's saying in the video.
So it's not just understanding different types of information. It's connecting the dots, making it actually mean something to us. That's pretty amazing.
It gets even better. What if you fed Gemini different pieces of music and asked it to compose something totally new based on those influences?
Hold up, so it's not just analysis, it can be creative too. That's wild.
Exactly. And this is just scratching the surface. As Google keeps developing Gemini, who knows what other mind-blowing stuff it'll be able to do. I mean, we could be talking about revolutionizing entire industries here.
Google's Gemini creates award-winning symphony. I can see the headlines now.
Mm-hmm.
But with all this talk about its capabilities, I'm curious, what kind of impact could this have on something like, say, software development?
Now that is a great question, and the perfect example of where Gemini's abilities could really shine. Just imagine.
So we're talking about Gemini maybe even helping developers write better code faster. How would that even work? It's like sci-fi stuff.
It's actually closer to reality than you might think. Remember how we were talking about Gemini being multimodal? That's key here. Like, picture a developer, right? Working on this super complex piece of software. They could tell Gemini what they want it to do, the functionality, maybe even sketch out a rough flow chart. And then, instead of grinding away at the code for hours, Gemini could take those instructions, really understand the goal, and just generate a big chunk of the code for them.
Okay, that's seriously impressive. Like having a super-powered coding buddy by your side. But what about debugging? Every developer's worst nightmare. Could Gemini lend a hand there too?
Absolutely. Gemini could look at the code, spot those pesky errors, even suggest fixes. I could even take it a step further, actually predict potential problems before they even pop up. Talk about saving developers from hours of headache-inducing debugging.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Working smarter, not harder, right? But let's switch gears for a second. We've been focusing on the tech side. But what about the human element? How could something like Gemini impact jobs, for developers specifically?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Some folks are worried that AI like Gemini could automate developers right out of a job, but I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. While it's true that Gemini could automate some of those tedious coding tasks, I actually think it'll free up developers to focus on the bigger picture stuff. The things that really require that human touch, creativity, problem solving, strategic thinking.
So instead of replacing developers, it's more about giving them superpowers, making them even more efficient and effective.
Exactly. Think of it as a partnership. Human ingenuity meets AI efficiency.
It's not about replacing humans. It's about humans using tools to do even greater things.
Now you're getting it. And this kind of collaboration, it could unleash a whole new wave of innovation in software. We're talking apps being developed at lightning speed with features we haven't even dreamed of yet.
The possibilities are mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the other side of the coin here. We were talking earlier about Google wanting to integrate Gemini into things like search. What kind of impact could that have on just our regular, everyday lives?
Now that's where things get really interesting. Imagine searching the web, right? But not just with words. Imagine using images, audio snippets, even describing a concept you can't quite put your finger on. Gemini could analyze all that, those multimodal searches, and give you results that are way more accurate, way more relevant to what you're actually looking for.
No more scrolling through pages of useless search results, just because you couldn't think of the right keywords.
Exactly. And think about how this could totally change how we interact with information online. Like, say you snap a picture of a landmark, right? Gemini could instantly give you historical facts, tell you about nearby restaurants, even dig up personal stories from other travelers.
Or imagine this. You take a picture of this amazing dish you had at a restaurant, and bam, Gemini finds the recipe, tells you where else you can find it.
See, the possibilities are pretty much endless. And it's not just about getting to the information, it's about really understanding it on a deeper level. Remember how Gemini can analyze research papers and lectures at the same time? Now imagine that power applied to news articles, documentaries, even social media. Gemini could help us cut through all the noise and get to the heart of the matter, present different perspectives, highlight the key facts and connections.
It'd be like having a personal research assistant, helping us make sense of this crazy amount of information that's thrown at us every single day. But with all this talk about this information utopia, we got to acknowledge the other side of that coin, right?
Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
We talked about AI and jobs, but there are bigger societal implications too, aren't there? What happens when AI becomes so good at analyzing information, at shaping how we see the world?
That is such an important point. As AI like Gemini becomes more and more integrated into our lives, we got to be really careful, really mindful of its potential influence. How do we make sure it's used to promote actual understanding, critical thinking, instead of manipulation?
And how do we make sure that everyone has equal access to this technology? That it doesn't just widen the gap between those who have and those who don't? These are questions we really need to start grappling with now.
Absolutely. And it's not just on the developers or the people making policies. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI. We have to make sure it's used responsibly, ethically.
It's a huge responsibility, but I feel like this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the beginning of a much bigger conversation.
You're telling me, and it's a conversation we need to have.
Now, before we dive into that even bigger picture, let's take a moment to recap some of the key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay, so we've really gone deep today. From the nuts and bolts of how Gemini works to what it could mean for things like education, software development, even how we use the internet every day.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. So for those who are just tuning in, let's do a quick recap on Google Gemini.
First things first, Gemini's all about being multimodal. Unlike those older AI models that were basically all about text, Gemini can understand and process information from a bunch of sources. Text, images, audio, you name it. It's like it interacts with information more like we do, putting together the pieces from different formats to really get the bigger picture.
It's like we're finally teaching AI to think outside the text box. Exactly. And that opens up a world of possibilities. We talked about personalized learning, where Gemini could actually tailor educational content to how you learn best. We even talked about how it could revolutionize software development, helping programmers write better code faster, even predicting those little errors before they become a big headache.
Oh, and don't forget about searching online. Imagine searching with more than just words, pictures, audio, you name it.
Now that's a game changer. But we got to remember, with any powerful technology, there are always two sides to the coin. We talked about how this could impact jobs and how important it is to make sure everyone has equal access to this kind of technology.
And we really got into the bigger questions, too. What does it mean for society as a whole when AI becomes so good at analyzing information, at shaping how we see the world?
These are really crucial questions. As AI like Gemini becomes more and more a part of our lives, we have to be so careful, so mindful of its influence. How do we use it to encourage real understanding, critical thinking? How do we prevent it from being used for manipulation?
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But you're right, these are conversations we need to have now.
100%. And it's not just on the shoulders of the people creating it either. All of us, we have a role to play in making sure AI is used responsibly and ethically. We have to be informed, engaged, and demand transparency from the companies developing this technology.
Well said. It's both exciting and a little scary to think about, you know?
Absolutely. But I think the best way forward is with cautious optimism. We have a real chance to shape this technology to make the world a better place, but it's going to take all of us working together.
Couldn't agree more. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of Google Gemini.
Until next time.
We hope this episode has given you a glimpse into the incredible and sometimes overwhelming world of AI. It's changing fast, it's full of challenges, and is definitely something we'll be keeping a close eye on. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll catch you next time.